buddy. I was responding to your beautiful message about Rainbow. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. Did you
I
watch any
did
of the
not. I
championship
did
stuff
not.
today? Yeah,
I'm too inundated with lacrosse to spend my extra time watching more of it.
yeah. I'm with you. Like if you do something as a profession, like shows about it are
No, not
not exactly all that
those.
entertaining.
I
Um,
caught the highlights yesterday only because like a lot of those guys, Romar, Holman, like I was with those guys 3 weekends straight at those camps. So I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like, these guys are obviously still professional athletes. It's, I'm going to support them and cheer from wherever. And they did well. Now that I have that like connection to them personally, like it's kind of cool. But outside of that, I didn't watch much.
yeah. Um, they did a little interview with Romar. I mean, so he did that interview series with a couple of the other guys.
Sorry.
That has been really, really
The
cool to
black, the black.
watch to see
Oh,
their perspective.
yeah.
Um, yep.
It was good. I actually sat down the last weekend. It was me, him, and Asher Nolting at the airport for like 3 hours waiting for our flights and whatnot. And they like chat. I don't think Asher was involved, but they were chatting about it a little bit. I know Trevor was involved. But yeah, just super good guys. Like his backstory is incredible too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, learning more about who he is as a person, who his family was,
Yeah.
his kind of journey through the sport
Yeah.
has been really neat to watch. I didn't know a ton about him, but through this series,
Yeah, he
learning more and more, which is kind of cool.
like at each one of the camps, we did like a kind of like a roundtable thing on Saturday morning where like we had all the pro guys and they, answered questions, but also like we a bunch of fun. The first weekend, like I didn't know his backstory either, and they were talking about, or he was talking about like where his parents are from and how he got involved in the sport and everything like that. And it was just like it was just wild to hear that like a guy at that level who's 26 years old or 27 years old like started playing lacrosse when he was in 6th grade and or whatever it was, and like had no background. His parents had never even heard of the sport, and now he is where he is.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, one of the comments he made. There's Ryan. Says he joined. Let me see if I can get him to join in on video. Let's see if it'll let him come in.
I don't know
There we
if you
go.
can do 3. I was hoping.
Yeah, you can do actually up to 4. Hey, Ryan.
What's up, Ryan?
What's happening, guys?
Same old thing. What's going on with you?
Just trying to straighten up the shop a little bit before going on camera. But it's always a mess. Starts out really clean and then very quickly falls into chaos as I'm looking for something specific.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we were just chit-chatting lacrosse stuff before you joined us. I don't know if you got interested or not. I mean, living where you live, I'm sure it's popular at a certain level, right?
Yeah, it is. I've never played it, but yeah, it is fairly popular up here. Was never much of a sports person myself, but I did play rugby for one season.
Just long enough to know it was not.
I think we might have lost him.
Not your thing. Oop.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get it back here in a second. But yeah, good stuff. Watching a lot of the diversity and inclusion stuff that they're doing, which is cool.
I have a weird take on it because I don't know if it's because I've been in it for so long or whatnot, but it's like, and I'm sure you get this vibe a little bit too. And it pained me to watch this yesterday and going back to like the the cheesy beer thing that they're doing. But like, yes, they're doing all that stuff, and it's great, right? And like, we can both agree that, you know, that stuff's awesome, and I love that they're doing it. Then on the flip side, like 10 minutes later, you'll flip onto their channel, and it'll be like the barstool guys like smoking cigarettes and like you know, storming the field, and it's like you guys were so good for a period of time. Like, what are we doing here? You know, I just don't
Right.
like.
Right.
It just baffles me.
There you go. It's Ryan back. Maybe he's back. There he is.
Hey, guys. I hope this isn't going to be how it goes all night. I don't know why that happened, but
I don't know. We'll
I
see.
got good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, who knows? Could be some sort of weird thing that happens when all of us join together. Who knows?
True.
But yeah, so Tyler and I just kind of get together every now and then and just chit chat about all kinds of stuff in general. And obviously we're both customers of yours. We've used your stuff. It's fantastic. And thought we might talk to you a little bit about what is J and FJ Baker and why should people pay attention to it? I mean, obviously we both used it. It's great leather. But figured we'd hear it straight from you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always happy to talk about Baker. So if anyone has questions about the leather, if they're debating whether to place an order or not, I'm always happy to jump on the phone and just talk about the different leathers that we have, what makes one leather maybe better than another leather for a different purpose. Sometimes it's just easier to talk about it over the phone than it is to spend an hour going back and forth over messaging.
Yeah, for sure.
So J&FJ Baker is an oak bark tannery out of England. Their story is that the tannery has been around forever. It goes back to the time when the Romans had invaded England. The current family that owns the tannery, it's now a sixth generation family.
Wow.
It's actually the Parr family. It's run by Andrew Parr, and two of his children, grown adults, are working and running the administrative and also apprenticing as the leather finishers. But they've been running the tannery for 160 years, and it is one of the last remaining oak bark tanneries really in the world. And what that means is the tannin that they use for their leather is just straight oak bark. It comes from oak trees surrounding the tannery on the countryside. It's a sustainable sourced bark. So it comes from a type of oak tree called coppice, where in the spring the bark separates from the actual tree and they can peel that off. And then over 20 years, like, it grows back. I think the trees that they do cut down for the bark, they don't cut the trees down for the bark. They cut the trees down for timber and for charcoal, but the bark is sent to the tannery. So the trees that they cut down, I think, only get to a certain width. So they're not big, giant oak trees that we see, in the States. They're relatively small, and they grow back within about 20 years. So they use the oak bark as the tannin, and it's a 12-month tanning process before they pull them out of the pits, and it's considered leather at that point. And then for what we use the leather as equestrian leather, it's another 3 months to finish the leather. So it goes through a series of slicking it down to kind of get it a smooth finish, not correcting it, but it just kind of smooths out all the bumps and everything and pushes everything flat. And then it gets oiled through a few different steps. It's dried, and then it's stained multiple times over a period of like 4 days. So it gets a few different hand staining moments, I guess, before it's dried again and then shipped to us. But yeah.
Wow. I guess I didn't know. I mean, I knew it took a long time. I didn't know it was like 16 months for basically, for this piece of leather to go from a crust hide all the way to, what's a finished piece of leather. and it justifies the price, really. I mean, when you just talk about manufacturing and all that other stuff, like when it takes that long to do the process, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's a small organization too. They've got about 20 employees. They have 3 front office workers. They've got 2 guys that maintain the old machines that they do have, and 15 tannery workers, ranging from the guys that shave the hides to moving the hides around, and then the highly specialized guys that have been there for the longest. Those are the ones that stain and finish the hides, because that just takes a whole nother level of knowledge and expertise that it takes a while to get to that point. But yeah, so
Yeah, and so
it's
Eric's asking if they're all still doing it by hand.
yeah, most of their process is done by hand, starting from dehairing. So to dehair the hides, they put the hides in these pits full of hydrated lime and water. So it's like a chalk, I guess, when it's done with it. So they stick it in. But the difference between bakers and other tanneries is they don't heat it up to speed up the process. They don't add any sulfides to it to help speed up the dehairing process. So it sits in these lime pits for 2 weeks. And at the end of that 2 weeks, the pores that are holding the hair follicles have just expanded. And so it helps release those hairs.
So it doesn't actually dissolve the hair. It just opens the hair follicle so it just kind of falls out. Or it can
Correct.
be easily removed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't dissolve it. It just makes it so that it comes out easier. They do have one super old machine at the first start where it kind of rips the hair out and also rips like the fat and the flesh off of the pelt in that first step. And then any like short hairs that maybe got missed by the machine, those get shaved off by hand on this, I don't know how many 100-year-old beam that they've got, but you've seen, if you go on their website, you can see pictures of this guy with this really long blade, shaving them by hand. He's just taking off all the short hairs. It's like when you shave and you miss a couple spots, there's a guy at the tannery that goes and just makes sure that all the hairs are taken off of the hide.
I don't think any of the three of us are experts on shaving at all.
No, absolutely not. I shave as little as possible.
Definitely not me.
But it's interesting because they miss things every now and then. So I've gotten hides that'll have a patch of hair on it. The natural hides that we get, the natural bridal, because it doesn't have any stain, it doesn't have any finish. Any hairs that were missed really stand out. I remember the first time seeing it, I was really grossed out. But then I realized, it's kind of cool that.
Oh yeah.
It's a very rugged process, and they fall out really fast. Like you can pull them out by hand. So if you were to make a belt or a wallet or something out of it, it falls out pretty quickly. So it's not something that's going to stay in.
Right.
And then, sorry, I just started going.
No, go ahead.
What were you saying?
Go ahead. It's all good.
Yeah. So then after 2 weeks, it goes into the first series of tanning pits, and they're I don't know how long the pits are. I think they're 6 feet in depth, but the hides are stacked in, up vertical. Yeah, they're dropped in vertical. That's where the holes in the hides come from, is because they're hanging on, wooden beams, suspended in the pit.
Right.
And then it starts out with a really light tannin water. Liquor, as they call it. And so the longer that it goes through the process, the stronger the tanning liquid is that they're in, because you don't want to put an untanned hide right into a super, super strong liquid, because then it's just going to tan the outside, but the inside's still going to be raw. So for the first 3 months, it goes up in strength. And then, each week they move the hides from one pit to the next, and so every week, a human being touches that hide and moves it on. They don't have a machine that lifts it up and puts it down. For their oak bark tanning, they don't. I've seen pictures of a machine, but it's for their veg tan line that they do. But their oak bark, one person lifts it up, puts it down, moves it to the next pit. And they have about 72 pits that they do that for on a Monday. Like, That's all you do on Mondays. You lift the hides up and you move them to the next pit. That's your day.
It's like leg day on Mondays.
Exactly. I would be able,
Holy
like
smokes.
watching the guys bending over. I'm like, God, that's got to hurt your back.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, if they're, I don't even, how much do you figure a whole hide? Do they do sides or are they doing whole hides?
So they do backs, butts, and shoulders for the oak bark tanning.
Okay.
So they don't do whole hides. Come to find out that the whole hides are just veg tanning, because the oak bark pits are the oldest building that they have there. And I guess maybe I should tell people who are listening, the Baker's does oak bark tanning, and then they also do a straight veg tan. So their veg tan is chestnut and mimosa bark. So it's a slightly different tannin that goes into it. The biggest difference really is the color of the leather when it comes out. You know, like if you get a natural from like Wickett and Craig or Herman Oak, it's going to be pink, right? Because the tanning liquid that they put it in is got a pinkish hue to it. Their oak bark tanning liquid is brown, like just straight brown liquid. So the leather when it comes out has that brown base to it. But their veg tan line, which they started doing, I think about 200 years ago.
Their most recent, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
What is
Because they talk about their new building that was built a couple hundred years ago. Yeah, that one's just chestnut and mimosa, and so that one has kind of like that pinkish hue to it. Yeah, but so for their oak bark tanning, because of the size of the pits, they just do double shoulders, butts, and backs. So they don't do traditional sides. They don't do whole hides.
So they break it down before, for the oak bark stuff, they break it down into pieces before they tan it.
Correct. They also use that as a chance to grade the leather. So because they do sole leather and like equestrian leather, so the the bridles and the harness leathers, the different times they're touching the hides, they're able to look and if there's big defects. So if there's big scars, if there's holes in the hides, that stuff gets pushed to the side and used for sole leather because you can cut around it. Stuff gets stacked up. So if it's really gnarly on the grain side, whatever, you're going to get four more stacked on top of it, and for a cowboy boot.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that's one of the more frustrating parts of doing what we do is some of the suppliers out there do tannery runs, and when you order a whole side of leather from them, it's happened to me more than once, you get the next one off the top. And when they're not doing that grading up front, for us as somebody who's using the final product, it's even recently, I ordered a side from a supplier and it came in and it had a huge scar like right in the middle, and I was making a big bag out of it, and it almost just tanked the whole project because they had no grading whatsoever out of some suppliers. But it's awesome to know that when Baker's does it, they're kind of pre-grading before they even go through the tanning process, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So they're kind of pulling out the stuff that, let that go for sole leather or whatever else, as opposed to, I think some of the American tanneries, I know Wickett and Craig, I've gotten some bad ones from them, in that they're just kind of throwing it all in there, and whatever comes out is whatever comes out.
And Baker's does tannery. They consider their leathers tannery run as well. But I think their standards are just significantly higher. So with the most traditional piece of leather coming from Baker's is going to be their bridle butt. So it's going to be, the strong bend of the side. So if you were to cut off the belly of a traditional side, if you were to cut off the shoulder area, what's left is the bend or the butt. That's what Baker's sells really the most of, is that piece right there. I think for
those that don't know, that's kind of like from behind your shoulder all the way to your hip on a cow. So it's kind of the back and halfway down the side.
Yeah, and it's also the strongest part of the hide too. So that's why it's really great for belts or strapped goods. They're I don't know. I've never seen a bad hide from them. They've had some healed scars on them, but for being a tannery run, they all look fantastic to me. but when like if you're buying a side from me, or if you're buying a hide from me, I'm also pulling stuff from our pile, trying to give the best ones that we've got. So it kind of gets like a second sorting. So we may get 15 brown hides from Baker's, but if there's some that may have a scar, they've got some weird coloring on it, or maybe the backside wasn't entirely finished properly, I can cut that into straps, and I can either make belts from some of it, or I can sell straps from it. So it's like I don't need to sell just off of the top of the pile. I'm going to go through the pile and really give the best hides to the people that are buying whole hides.
Yep. And I'll say that my experience with you has been really good in that, you've even gone out of your way to just, hey, here's the picture of what I'm going to send you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Which nobody does that. I think you may be the only person that goes to that kind of trouble.
But guys, this is an expensive leather. I mean, it's $350 for a 10 square foot piece of leather. I mean, yes, there's got a huge history that goes into it, and there's reasons for why it's expensive. But as someone who's just buying one, that's a big investment. So if I can help reduce some of the anxiety that comes from when you're just buying a piece of leather and wondering whether it's going to have holes in it, sending a simple picture is going to do a lot to reduce that anxiety. So that way, when they get it and they open it up, it's going to look different from what they're expecting because it's a more rugged hide. But hey, I've got an idea of what it's going to be. I think it does a lot to, start a conversation about why this leather is different from or why it's not squeaky clean. Like the natural leathers, they're going to be dirty. It's a 300-year-old, 400-year-old building with dirt and grime, and they can literally get dragged through the tannery. But if you see a picture of it ahead of time and know that it's got dirt on it, you're not going to get mad when you open it up and it's got dirt on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of other tanneries, a lot of their suppliers could learn from this.
Yeah. But it takes time. I mean, we're building this market in the U.S. It started 5 years ago with nobody really knowing how to order it from Baker's. There was two companies prior to CarmineJack that was buying bridal leather at one point before we jumped in. When we were buying it, really at first, nobody at the time in the U.S. was buying it direct from Baker's for their equestrian leather. Lisa Sorrell was selling their boot leather for a number of years. So we've really built up like the name of J&F Baker in the U.S. and really showing what the leather could be used for. So I want people to have a good experience with it. So it's going to take some extra time on my side, but you spend $350 on a hide and you don't have a good experience opening it up, that's the last time you're going to buy it. And because it's such a new market, such a new thing here, I can't have people having a bad experience opening up the leather.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense. That's awesome. I know I've enjoyed everything that I've gotten. So it's good stuff. It's almost, like you need to be doing this for a little while. And with the costs and everything else, you need to have some experience. It's probably not the best leather for a beginner. But once you get into that intermediate range of your skill and what you're making and everything else, for the makers that are out there paying attention to this, you owe it to yourself to get some bakers and work with it. If you're just working with panels from somebody else, or even if you've used a bridle from another supplier, this stuff is different. So
it is.
I mean, I know you and I have had conversations before about how, I'll no shame. Like I've had my hands on more Wickett and Craig bridle than I ever really care to ever again. And that stuff is dusty and dry and the finish is just not the same. But I think, and maybe you can talk a little bit about, is there a difference between English bridle and what makes the Baker's bridle different than the other bridles that may or may not be sold?
Yeah, so the difference I think between English bridle and bridle leather from Baker's is the bridle leather that the English bridle leather is trying to be. The bridle leather from Baker's, it is going to have a dry feeling to it. When you first touch it, you first hold it, if you cut a square out of it, you know, the inside, the fibers, it does feel dry. It's not super greasy on the outside. It may look super greasy, but it's not. It's got the Brida leather has a super smooth finished flesh side to it. The top side, the grain side, is stained. It's hand stained. They're going to be about 5.5 millimeters thick, but because that dry feeling from the Brida leather of Baker's comes from the denseness of the fibers. So when they tan the leather and the slow tanning process that they do, that leather doesn't swell up. You know, because they're not rushing it, it just gently soaks up those tannins. So the fibers in the Baker's leather are still going to have that natural alignment. And that's where you're going to get a lot of that tensile strength from, even as it breaks in. Now with the flesh side, while it starts out super hard and smooth, the flesh side is going to break in with the leather as well. And I'm just going to go grab some leathers because I think it's just going to do better if we can just see some of this stuff. So hold on a second, guys. I got a table set up here. Might as well throw some hides on here.
Oh, yeah.
Right. All right, so. Hold on a second. Light hit me in the head.
Hazard the job.
Yeah. Okay, so that did not flip around. Is it going to stay that time? There we go. Okay. So this is a butt. You know, here's the curvy end. This is where the actual butt is. Here's where the tail is. You can always tell the spine by where the tail. Now the number, each hide has a number on it. You really can't see it on this one. But if you ever buy a side of Baker's, you're always going to find some number on it. And that's the week that it went into the tanning pits.
Wow.
So you're going to have 1 to 52. So you've got this 10 square foot hide here. You know, the strongest pieces are going to be on this side because this is where the spine is. You know, in terms of waist, I guess, you know, because of how they cut it, because there's no bellies and there's no shoulders, when you're making hides, when you're making straps, the only part that's really going to be soft is this corner right here, because there was a belly that was right here and there was a shoulder right here. So all of this is usable. This can even be like split down to like use for wallet pieces and stuff. So,
yeah. No, that's I will say that I got a couple bellies when you were still ordering those, and that's fantastic for small goods stuff.
And then here's the flesh side to it. Let's get this light here. Yeah, it's like,
and it's not like just a pasted flesh, right? They're doing something else to it.
It's a mossed flesh, so it's similar to like the English bridles, but they just use a different material. Like, I don't know if it's a resin or what, and then they like warm plate it, and so it gives it like a shine. It adds a lot of firmness. You know, if you look at it from way up above, you can kind of see the different areas, like where the plates hit it. Sometimes they're a little more pronounced. But as the leather breaks in, this flesh side here, you know, it's not going to crack. It's not going to get all messed up. This is actually going to break into, it's going to develop a really nice, soft, almost velvet feel to it as it breaks in. So the bridal leather, while it starts out dry, hard to do one-handed. As it breaks in, it gets softer and a little bit more supple for being a 5 millimeter thick hide.
Right.
Yet that strength, that the tensile strength is still going to be there. So while you can have a dog leash that you can bunch up into your fist, you know, it's still gonna be just as strong as the day you made it. So, you know, the full grain is a little bit more scratch resistant than I think some of the harness leathers. Like I know with Wick and Craig, when I was making belts, I was always a little worried about the finish on it getting super scratched up as I was burnishing the edges and stuff. Um, but yeah, so that's the bridle leather. Bridle leather is great for casual belts. Um, it because they're going to get softer. They're going to hug your body more. Um, I use them for jeans and Dockers and khakis. So it makes a really, really great casual belt. We also have harness leather.
Oh, real quick, Devin's asking, how strong is it once it's skived down to thinner weights?
I never tried it.
I can tell you, I have. I mean, my current
Isn't
that kind of shows. But my current belt is one of yours. That that end I skived down pretty thin. I mean, to the point it's when you let it go, and it's just as strong as the rest of the belt. I mean, I don't think it suffers at all when you skive it down to that's about half the thickness of the strap, which I don't think there's any loss of strength at all. I mean, and even to the point, I think there's other makers that I've seen even around the world that are using this stuff that are still using it pretty thin, down at like 3 and 4 ounces to make full-on finished goods. I mean,
I've got some 4-ounce. I think it's 4 ounces. And it's just from my shoulder. This is 3 1/4. You know what I mean? It's going to have a little stretch to it because it's 3 1/4 ounces, but like, I can't tear it. So, I'd say the tensile strength is still there because you got a fair amount of fibers. It's just from the shoulder piece, and I guess I don't know what you would want to do, but like if this was a bag and you had some bricks in there,
it's not going anywhere.
I tried. Now I just look like an idiot on camera. So, well, like I mean it's stretched, but
yeah.
I mean, no one's going to make a bag out of 3 1/4. So, you can. It's still strong leather because of how they make it. So,
yeah,
I love it. It smells so good, boys. It smells so good.
Now you're just taunting everybody. I mean,
don't let anybody tell you differently. Everyone smells the leather.
Yeah,
that's for sure. You just cut this off so I don't sell this.
Well, I mean, once you get some of it in, your shop will smell wonderful for quite a period of time just having it in there.
Yeah, when you make a belt out of it, it also heats up like the tannins in the leather, and so that smoky smell really kind of spreads pretty quickly. It dissipates after like a week, but I remember the first baker's leather belt I made. I'm in my super corporate insurance job, and I'm just like, I hope no one else can. I mean, it smelled great, but it's not something you would attribute. Like, it smelled like a smoker, that's for sure. Like a meat smoker, not a cigarette smoker.
Exactly. It smelled like a pound of pulled pork walking around.
But we also sell harness leather, which it's a bit different than like American harness leather. So the harness leather from Baker's, what they do is they essentially take the hides when they come out of the pits, and they dunk it in a tank of near boiling mutton tallow. So they've got this 9-foot long tank that it's filled with tallow. So the white, animal fat, that they bring it up to a boil and they let it cool for a little while so that it's not as hot, and they dunk these backs into it and these butts, and they let them sit there, and it soaks up this grease. And so afterwards you get this leather that, while the baker's leather starts out firm enough as it is, it's just stiff as a board sometimes, because that tallow, what it does is it soaks into the leather, and it increases the tensile strength between those fibers. It helps reduce the water resistance. It adds water resistance to it, so you don't get like the water stains that you would from like a regular natural. Um, but it makes the leather more firm, and it's going to keep that firmness for a whole lot longer. Um, and I don't have any. I don't want to pull out a bag, but I got a whole bunch of like shoulders that we've cut from them.
And that's the remind me, because I know at one point when I ordered something from you, you tossed in a couple samples, and that's the blue and the green and that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the blue, that would have been the harness. We don't have the blue and the green harness leather anymore. Give me just a minute here. Hold on just a second, guys.
But yeah, that the harness leather is unreal. It's I've had it side by side with shell cordovan, and the harness leather is every bit as beautiful as a piece of shell cordovan is. Um, and honestly, it's a better piece of leather, at least in my opinion. But it's really
Like
spectacular stuff.
it certainly has a different use. All right. So with the harness, it doesn't have a finished flesh side to it. But because of all of the tallow and grease that went into it, excuse me, the flesh side, what it's going to do is it's going to burnish itself. So if you're using this as a belt, this side here, slowly start to burnish. This one looks pretty burnished as it is. They may have like heated the back side of this, but like this one's not so much. It's more just like split. So they don't need to finish the flesh side in order for it to get firmness. But like it's some of that tannery dirt that comes on it. I can guarantee you, if you buy a natural hide, it's going to have some kind of dirt on it. But that's all part of the story.
Oh yeah.
May have some of these like shoulder fat wrinkle marks. You can really.
Oh wow.
Wow.
It's pretty thick. But if somebody wanted that split down, you can direct ship to somewhere like District or Rocky Mountain that can do the splitting and then send it back out, right?
Yes. Yeah. District does a really great job splitting. It does a number on their splitter, so they won't take a whole hide, but they'll take large panels. I think they'll take 24 by 24 panels of this. I did find a place in New York that is willing to take a whole back and split that down for like $65. So a back, which is going to be 14 to 18 square feet. If you think Rocky Mountain charges $2.50 to $3 a square foot.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Not terrible. To have it all as one piece. So, but like the harness leather at its full thickness, what it's really great for is like work belts, rugged belts. Like this is the chocolate. It's kind of like this stuff here, which is really nice. I like seeing this stuff. It's going to be, because it's going to keep its firmness for a lot longer. I recommend this stuff for people who really like thick denim. The 21 ounces, the 25 ouncer denim folks would probably love a belt that's going to keep its firmness for a long time. If you wear something on your waist, like a gun or a knife, or if you have a cell phone, or if you work concerts like I do and you wear a radio, this leather is great for that because, it's not gonna bend or stuff like that. So,
wow.
I love the harness leather. We're working on getting some more. The harness leather takes a lot longer for them to make. So because because they're leathers, they really treat it as if it's being used for saddle work. Um, so if I'm buying a back, they make them with the expectation that someone is going to be making reins or um, bridles and things that you need a longer piece of leather for, right? So for the harness leather, for the harness backs, the very, very best pieces of leather get saved as backs because they're going to be consistent thickness from the butt all the way through the shoulder. So I just found out they only make about 50 harness backs a year of the oak bark tan stuff. So it's kind of a rare leather. I didn't realize that. I knew there was always a weight, but I didn't realize they only made about 50 of them. They are increasing their production because we're ordering a lot more of it. So if we ever go out of stock and you wonder if we're ever going to get it back in, yeah, it takes a while.
Take time.
But
Yeah.
it's worth waiting for. That's for sure. I love this stuff. I love this harness leather.
Oh, 100%. And I don't know. I mean, is there even, not that, this isn't about advertising for, competitors or whatever, but I don't know that there's any leather of that kind of thickness and firmness and everything else that you can really get that kind of performs the same, right?
I don't know. I don't think so. The harness from Baker's, it just has a different feel. I think it's firmer. It's more firm than the harness from Wickett and Craig. It's closest to Herman Oak in the U.S. Like Herman Oak has a harness leather that seems pretty close, but I don't know how it. I've never ordered it beyond just a couple samples.
Yeah, I haven't really messed with Herman Oak much at all.
Yeah.
It seems more. I know, like Eric at Quarter uses a lot of Herman Oak, and like Ben Geisler and the true like saddle makers love Herman Oak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in terms of like most crafter types don't really mess with it. Just because there's a lot of better options for small goods and whatever else. I mean, but yeah, that's the harness stuff is pretty impressive. Like so if a regular oak bark bridle takes 16 months, how long does it take to do the harness?
The bridle takes 15. The harness takes, I think, about the same as well. It's just a different way of dressing it.
Okay.
It still gets smoothed. It gets hard rolled. So hey, Dad Hands, let me send you some Baker's natural leather because I've heard people say that as well about Herman Oak being the only tooling leather they used, and the moment they used Baker's, they fall in love with it. So shoot me your info. Let me send you some, and we can just do a side by side. I don't tool. I don't stamp. I don't do any of that. But I'm a belt maker.
And if you're sending her that, be sure to send her the grease that you make, because that stuff is fantastic. Especially for this specific leather, and I know when you've talked about it with me before, you've called it curried leather. So some people may not kind of know what currying is about and what the difference is. And your balm that you sell is for, this stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, curried leather. It's leather that gets waxed and oiled and finished at the end. So shell cordovan is a curried leather. The people that do the finishing of the shell cordovan, they're called curriers. Sedgwick's is a curried leather. Chrome Excel, because they take the leather when it comes out of the tanning pits and it gets dressed with greases and oils and stains. It's a process called currying. It's one of the last processes of the tanning. Hold on. Sorry, I've got a 15-month-old, so I'm always perpetually sick.
They have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, but Dad Hands, like, I get it. Like, it's significantly more expensive than Herman Oak, so it's a hard sell for some folks. But I'd love to send you some. You can just try it. Because there could be some higher end clients that maybe you want to upsell to. Certainly a possibility.
So
But
you
they
might
make other
put her off
leathers
on a
too.
you might put her off on a track that she can't come back from.
Yeah, that I won't argue with that. I'd be happy to find a way to support that. But they do make some other leathers too. So one of their really popular ones right now is their Russian calf leather that everyone's talking about, which is the reproduction of the reindeer leather that they found off of the Meta Katerina, the ship that sank in 1776, 1778. Yeah, there was this shipwreck off the coast of England that back in the 70s, the divers were able to salvage some hides out of the shipwreck. And when they opened up these bundles, there was leather that was usable. And it was this crosshatch pattern leather that had this smoky aroma to it. And it was this leather that supposedly came from Russia that the process of making it was lost over time. And Baker's was able to get some of these hides and reproduce that leather for Hermes and a couple other bag makers. And now it's used as like a shoe leather, used for wallets. But I got some right here.
That's the
It's,
and the stuff's incredible.
I love this. It's just a treat to work with.
Super.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible at how soft this leather's gotten over the course of I don't know, probably 3 months. I want to say I've been using it now. It was super hard to make a wall with it just because it's kind of firm and has a lot of characteristics I think that Ryan's been talking about. But it's amazing now.
Yeah, and I found it to be fairly scratch resistant.
Yeah, I mean, a single scratch on this wall.
Yeah. So as a boot leather, it's I love a boot leather that's going to hold up. It's not going to get all scratched up the moment I step outside. It's got a nice finished flesh side to it too.
Yeah, and so you had a pair of boots made from that for the stitch down stuff, right?
I did, yes. I wanted to show people how it aged and how the leather wears. Because it's an expensive leather. I mean, we sell this at $46 a square foot. There's a good reason for it. It's first off, I mean, it's an expensive leather when I buy it. There's a number of steps that go into finishing this leather on the tannery side. So with the leather that expensive, really wanted to show people how it ages and how it wears. And honestly, I was surprised because there's no scratches on it. It didn't pick up any water stains. I'm trying to beat it up for a patina contest. Not the right leather for a patina contest, but that's what I wanted to show was how it's going to be 6 months after, going through a Minnesota winter. But,
You got them on.
Yeah, so what was that?
You have them with you?
I can go get them if you give me just a minute. Here, let you all stare at this. Now, this is a second quality hide, so it's got some gnarliness to it. We do have a couple second quality hides. They are significantly cheaper, but with our Russian hides, you're not going to have this. You're not going to have this. You're going to have a little bit of loose grain on this end here, like right about here, and same on the other side. But these Russian hides are going to be 98% usable. So when you're getting it and you're like, oh shit, this is expensive. Yeah, but you're getting a hide that's not going to have any of this gnarliness on it. So, and for people buying whole hides, I'm always happy to jump on FaceTime and we can go through the different hides and you can pick out your hide.
Yeah, that was, I think whenever I got my Russian calf from you, it was, I think you were doing quarters. Might have been halves, I can't remember. But yeah, that was definitely, we didn't do FaceTime, but definitely it was like, hey, here's pictures of a couple different ones. Let me know which one you like and go from that. And that was awesome.
Yeah.
But to the point, I mean, when you're talking about a piece of leather that's that expensive, it's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, it certainly is, because you want to know. So here's boots. I did just condition them. I'm a little disappointed with how the conditioner did on this because it's got all this texture on it that the beeswax got stuck into. So I may have to retool the conditioner for this. But like, it's got very little wear and tear on it. I mean, you can see how much it's been worn because this was a different color. Yeah, and this is like 7 ounces, I think, 6, 7 ounces. So it's held up really, really well. I'm really happy about it.
Dude, they look new. I mean,
those are beautiful.
Yeah, it's an incredible pair of boots. And remind me who made them?
Whites.
Oh, Whites. Okay, so out of Portland, right?
Out of Spokane.
Okay,
Spokane.
Sorry,
Ryan. You use your leather grease on those or no?
I did. Yeah, I used my leather grease on this, and I'll be honest, I'm not too happy with how it went.
I'm asking because I'm staring at your leather grease right now, and I was, debating doing the exact same thing that you're talking about right now on the wallet, but I'll hold off.
Because I think what I'll do is I'm going to take the beeswax off of it. I think that's what this is right here is the beeswax that's in it. I add a little beeswax, but I don't think that's necessary. So, yeah, hold off because it may get. I'll send you some new stuff for it, but yeah, I love wearing these boots. They're super comfy. I would get a different sole on it for the Minnesota winters, but these have held up so well.
What style is that? Is that the cutter or is that? Or did you?
Yeah, that's the 350 cutter.
Yeah, I got a pair of that and they're rough out stuff that are a couple of years old now. But man, these are making me want to get a pair made in the Russian calf.
I'm hopefully. Where's my turner? There we go. Hopefully, talking with Frank's. Well, I have started talking with Frank's about having them make a pair of boots for me, using their harness leather. I think Frank's is certainly open to accepting outside leathers. I know White's is really busy right now. Right after we had that pair made, their wait times went from 16 to 24 weeks, something like that.
I think I waited 8 the first time, 8 to 10. I wanted probably like 3 years ago. So I'm not.
But Frank's may be an option.
Okay.
They seemed very excited to try the Baker's leather, the harness leather. They just got samples the other day, so I'm just waiting to hear back from them about that and having a pair made. So hopefully for the next patina contest, there'll be a natural harnessed boot to beat up. And,
that'll be incredible.
Very, very excited. So hopefully that works out. I keep trying to make boots out of this leather and prove to the tannery that it can be used for more than saddle leather. But they're just like, no, Mr. Bonamia, you want to use calf leathers or chrome tan leathers for your boots. And I was like, no, veg tan. We're using veg tan. I'm just that's crazy American. So,
but it's proof that it works, right? I mean,
yeah, it does. I have a pair of boots from Nick's that I used the oak bark bridle from. That ended up being a little too soft. They've held up really well, but like they weren't as scratch resistant as I wanted. In comparison, the Russian leather can't put a scratch on it. So hopefully the harness is kind of that middle ground, between something not as expensive as the Russian leather, but something that's more scratch resistant than the bridle.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I can't wait to see how that whole deal works out.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. It usually takes about a year. I think Nick's was a year from start to finish. White's was about a year between, hey, can I send you samples to the finished boots? So hopefully Frank's goes a little bit. I've learned a lot more about boots than the first time I talked with the guys at Nick's. So,
cool.
Hopefully. Yeah, what other questions can I answer for you guys? I've just kind of been rambling, I feel. I'm sorry.
No, it's all incredible stuff. Like I learned more in this past, almost hour than I think I really knew at least I've doubled my knowledge about it. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
The same thing. I mean, I guess it's been an education. I'm just like kind of nerding out a little bit. I mean, I've tried the reindeer. I've had some experience with the bridle. I mean, I have at least 2 or 3 pair of your laces in my boots right now. And now I'm just trying to figure out what I'm gonna order next. I can't imagine what everyone else is thinking.
Well, it is fun watching the market grow in the U.S. because we're getting more people asking about it, talking about it, posting about it. We're getting it goes from the smaller makers, medium-sized makers now. Like the brand of JNFJ Baker in the U.S. is, I think, really starting to take off organically. And I love seeing it grow. I love watching what people make with it. I'm always happy to talk about our process. If you're having problems with the leather, let me know. I know that when I first started using Bakers, I had problems with like folding the leather over the buckle area. It was cracking. I reached out to a UK maker who was super generous with their time and helped me with it because when he started using it, he had the same problem and somebody helped him. And so it's just been one person after the next, like paying it forward. So when people buy leather, I want them to succeed with this leather. I want them to have customers that buy from them versus from me. I would much rather be selling leather and having you guys be successful than to have people buy belts from us, to be totally honest.
yeah, I mean, it's a different business, right? I mean, it's a business being a supplier versus a business being a maker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a much cooler thing for a big old bunch of people to be making Baker's belts, right? I guess it's one of those deals where we can talk about it all day long, but until somebody gets their hands on it, you really don't fully appreciate how different it is and how much better it is. And I think that was probably because I think I originally ordered, I think it was one of the London tan bellies. And until you get your hands on it and start working with some of it, it's hard to understand, but it's worth it. Like I can tell you personally, I hope to never use bridle that's not Baker's, because it's so much different and so much better. Great stuff.
Yeah, and we're gonna try selling some smaller pieces of leather. It's hard to sell this as a panel because I just happen to have a shoulder sitting on my desk here. I'm hesitant to sell panels of this because, while, there's this area in the shoulder, which has got more of the grain, more ruggedness. This is still a good usable area, but if you're just buying a 9x16 panel and you get this as half of it,
yeah,
it's not what you're going to be expecting. You're going to be expecting something that is super smooth the whole way through. So to get just a small piece, I don't want to do that. So I'd rather sell like a quarter hide or a half shoulder so you get a bigger one. It's just because they leave a lot of this in their leather. Sometimes it's a little more pronounced. Sometimes it's going to be, you're going to have some little growths here and there. Like as a panel, I don't know. I'm just worried about somebody getting a panel with this. It's all about expectations. But we're going to try selling smaller cuts of like the shoulder. Now, I've got some other shoulders that, if I can cut a nice panel out of, I will. But like, I don't want your panel to have this be the only part here. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah. So, yeah, no,
but
it would think if you got an edge piece or something like that, as opposed to, and maybe quarters and halves are a better way to do it.
yes. So for the people that are like, why don't you sell panels? It's like, because it's hard with this leather, to be totally honest. And
well, yeah, not to mention, it's just, having spent a decent amount of time around DLS and watching them cut panels and everything else, I mean, there's just, and maybe it's the difference because this stuff is more expensive per square foot. I mean, when you cut panels out of it, the price is going to go way up because of the the waste that's around the panel.
Yield, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking about. I mean, if I mean, I think you just mentioned it, Ryan. Like a lot of these hides and stuff that you're selling, very usable, right? Like up until right up into the edges, right? And I think me and I think me and Chuck get it, right? But to the average person, they're expecting a DLS 12 by 12 panel that's immaculate, right? And that's gonna come back on you more so than anything. You're conscious, and also the stuff that you're wasting. But I mean, I think there's something to be said about using as much as humanly possible. When I get something, like
Yeah.
I try and scratch all of my pieces to create as much yield as possible, and it's something that Chuck and I have discussed at length, especially this bag and setting up huge pieces to make sure you can get your pattern on the entire thing, right? So again, like I would say the quarters and halves are probably the way to go, just because I mean it already is such an expensive leather to work with that I think that only makes expectations go through the roof even more.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, I appreciate that. The price is not something I take lightly. Like it took us a long time to figure out the pricing, because there was never anything like this being sold in the States. But it's been nice though. Our pricing's been consistent all the way through COVID, because we started selling February of 2020. 2 months later, COVID hit. So while we were able to keep our prices pretty consistent, the Russian leather's gone up a little bit, but
Also, if I mean, we're talking like 5 millimeter thick leather. What is that like? Was that 10, 12 ounce leather? I mean, what are you doing with a panel of 12 ounce leather that's going to get split immediately anyways, right?
yeah, and we've got some thinner stuff too. We're trying. They don't have they don't have a capability of splitting really thin.
Sure.
Like they can split at the tannery down to about 5 ounces, but I also don't have the capability of stocking a bunch of different thicknesses.
Right.
It's most of it is if I stopped selling leather today, at least I've got a shop filled with leather that I can use for my own stuff. So that's kind of how I think of when I order. So if there's something special you want, great, reach out. We can try to get something thinner. Otherwise, I can lead you to people like District, Bill over at District, who can split it down. But I mean, it's how Bill can stock thicknesses of things. Blows my mind how he can keep track of all of that. It's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, most of his stuff comes in at the same weight, and then they'll split it down, to the order or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely. I mean, 10 to 12 ounce for most makers, unless you're making a belt, it's going to need to be split down into a more manageable weight anyway. And it's truly, unless you're making a belt, you can't split it down at home. Like there is no piece of equipment that you have, like I have in my shop, that I could split down a panel. Like it just, even, you've seen some folks with pretty newer, like high-end benchtop splitters, and that's not going to work either. I mean, it just needs to go to somebody to be professionally split.
Yeah.
And I think like we've been talking about, somebody's, your beginner person at leatherworking is not going to be interested in this stuff. It's going to be somebody who's a little bit further along in their journey that isn't necessarily going to balk at the price. And then again, for what you're talking about, isn't going to balk at having it split down to be the right weight for what they need. I mean, we've all been there. I mean, I've used all kinds of leather weights that weren't appropriate for what I was making out. I mean, everybody's first wallet was like a half-inch thick, because you didn't know what you were doing, and you just walked.
Veg tan, baby.
Yeah, exactly. The manager's special veg tan shoulder.
Yep, $55.
Yep, and it was 5.5 to 6 ounces, and you made a wallet out of it anyway.
Card holder was a half inch.
Yeah, exactly. So you made a wallet out of belt leather, and that's cool. Everybody does it.
Yeah, mine was it was Horween, was not Dublin, Derby from Maverick,
Oh yeah.
6 ounces. I had no idea. I didn't know what 6 ounces was, and I didn't know what 4 ounces felt like compared to 6 ounces.
Oh
You're
yeah.
That thing was thick. I still have it.
higher numbers definitely got to be better. That was my. I was like, man, they got this like swing, and they got this like 3 ounce stuff that looks like garbage. Like, I definitely need this 6 ounce whatever shoulder that they have this year for $50. Like, this is where I'm starting with this whole thing. So we've all been there. I mean, I think that, even myself, like, I mean, I'm still learning, and I think Ryan, we've spoken a handful of times, and I think I probably got my first stuff from you like maybe a year and a half or whatever. That's 3-4 years into me starting this thing. So I think, once you kind of work those kinks out, and once you realize how different leathers are out there and how many different tanneries that you can experiment with and stuff like that, you kind of fall into that sweet spot, right? Like, the first time that you order shell cordovan and you're like, oh my God, $190 from Horween, and I don't even have any idea what I'm getting. And it comes and you're just super disappointed because no one looked at it and there's a rip in the center of your shell and it's a complete nightmare or whatever. So I think the way that you're building this and the way that you're looking at it from a customer service standpoint, knowing where your price point is the only real reason that people are going to like feel comfortable kind of coming to you to do something like this. So I really appreciate, the efforts you go to satisfy, I guess, that customer's potential fear of, getting something silly, especially when they're paying the prices that, we're paying for, this big other.
Yeah, and I think along those lines with, talk about expectations. One thing people really, that I didn't explain earlier, but I like to say that Baker's is consistently inconsistent. So dye lots are going to change from day to day. The color of one hide from one batch is going to be different from the color of a hide the next batch. Because they stain these things over a couple of days. If one person is heavy-handed one day, or if it's cold outside, that dye is going to be thicker, or if it's hot, it's going to be thinner. So there's so many variables that impact how it looks and how it feels. It's going to change. But as it breaks in, it ultimately comes to the same color and the same feel. Like, I didn't know that the different temperatures, if it's super hot outside, they have a hard time making super firm bridle leather because the resin that they put on the flesh side evaporates so fast before they can plate it. So it creates a softer bridle leather. And with the 105-degree temperature heat wave that they had this past summer, we got a batch that was softer. But I had some customers that weren't happy with it, and we offered to send them some stuff when we got some more firm stuff in. We try to make it right. So, if something doesn't meet your expectations, or if you got an issue with it, just give me a shout.
Oh, and I think at one point I saw, am I right in remembering that there's a bag leather that's also available?
Yes.
Or no?
Yeah, we got a bag hide. So they got some bag leathers. I'm pull this out. Hold on. Clear off the table here.
Check.
What's
This
that?
might be your next project.
Yeah, no, I would have a dream to make a bag out of Baker's bridle. We've got to find the right one.
Yeah, so they got a couple.
Because I think I saw it was Beansy that made one. I was like, bag leather, what's that about? And I don't think we've ever really talked about it, but it just kind of jumped up out of my brain.
So they make whole hides here without the bellies, and they're the same thing, but one is called a panel hide, and that's just a smooth leather. And so this is the panel hide. It's full grain, but it's smooth. But then they take the same hide and they put a print on it. It's almost like an epi print.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really cool.
And so it adds some firmness. This is like an old school, like It's used this if you see some vintage World War II and World War I items, Army items, they're the UK military. You'll see this pattern on it, but this is their bag hide. So they take their panel hide and they stamp this pattern onto it. This makes a really nice.
What's the thickness on that, Ryan?
This one is like 3 millimeters because I ordered it really thick. It usually comes like 5-6 ounces. So like this is 6 ounces here. Hold on just a second. I'm doing this all one-handed. So this is Australian nut. Super pretty. Yeah, this is like 6 ounces here. It's great for turned bags. You can do gusset bags with it. I'm actually having a pair of boots made with this.
Of course you are.
By Nathan. Of course. By Nathan Florsheim. He's doing them right now. Super excited about that.
I saw those and I thought that those were the Russian calf, but because they kind of have a similar grain side, I guess, right? I mean, they're at first glance, it's pretty tough to tell the difference.
Well, yeah. So the bag hide, yeah, I'm having it made from the smooth leather.
Yeah.
But the bag hide, if you compare the Russian to it, hold on a second. Yeah, if you look, it's almost like, I'm pretty sure they take this embossing panel.
Yeah.
So they stamp the Russian this way, and then they rotate it 45 degrees and stamp it again, and that's how you get the crosshatch pattern.
Yeah. I was going to say, it looks
super similar. You're right.
It looks like they just didn't rotate it on the bag leather, and they just kept it going in one direction, which is, I think is awesome. We're going to take this offline because I think this might be something where I need for a personal project.
We do have one of these coming. It's gonna be about 6 ounces in this color. So this is the dark stain.
Yeah.
Dark stain for bakers can vary from, we call it oak stain because it's very light, and then this is still dark stain, but it's very dark. So we changed the name of the bridle because I didn't want people to get confused on why it wasn't dark. But it's got a super nice flesh side to it. It's not finished, but it's split. So it's not fuzzy. It's not fuzzy at all. And then, like with the panel, again, like this is the flesh side to it. So it's really nice and pretty. It feels really nice. I love this stuff. I love all the other leathers. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite. But yeah, panel hides. Panel hides are nice. They're traditionally used for carriage tops and upholstery, but now they use them for bags, and it comes as, we've gotten it as London tan, Australian nut, comes natural as well. Let me show you that because it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's worth pulling out. Hold on a second.
I can't believe you held out on us until you're like, oh, wait a second, that comes in natural. Let me remember.
Oh, wait.
I have so many different leathers, guys.
Two guys that are like just making bags, talking about bags. I'll throw that in there at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Which bundle of joy is it? Here, let me show you my problem that I have. So here's this is a bit of a mess right now because I just tore through a bunch of it. We got like bridal leathers up here. This is normally like black and natural. I always like to keep the natural covered so it doesn't oxidize and stuff like that. And then we've got oak stain and London tan down here. We're getting a reorder here in a few weeks. So, and then harness leathers are kept under here. But then up here is everything else. This is like my personal stash. And it's like, where in the personal stash is that one bundle of leather? That's not it. is it? Here somewhere. This is it. Nope, that's Chrome Excel. All right, guys.
You can't not deliver at this point.
No, I've got it here. I know. I'm trying to like be organized sometimes. Then I reorganize everything.
I did away with that a long time ago. I felt like organizing just turned into more disorganizing.
Yeah, right. As you can see, the giant pile of garbage that's over the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, the one positive I have that I'll on stuff. So like I can't do that. Like over my shoulder office, over this shoulder dog crate. Like
Here.
Well, see, that's the curse to having a little bit of room. Then it's like you're like, sure, I can find another side of it.
Yeah.
A horrible idea.
What's tough is when I get restocks in, and our orders are increasingly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when you get 60, 70 hides in, and you're like, where am I going to put all this stuff?
Yeah.
So this is the natural panel hide. This is the one half that I didn't sell. Hold on. Fix my tripod here. Yeah, so this is like the shoulder end,
Okay.
Comes as a back. This was 5 ounces.
Do they do the natural run with the with that back print or no?
I think they can. Yes, they could. And then the flesh side. Fighting my camera here. So this is the loose grain corner. It's not even loose, but this is like the flank area, so it's a little ragged here. When you get up here, it looks really nice. Can't see too well. I'm looking.
I love that you're worried about a little floppy area on the corner. When I've gotten hides where it's looked like the animal's leg was broken and kind of backwards, and it's still stuck on that. Like they didn't just trim the hide at all. It was just.
Yeah. Or when you just order a Wicked or you just order a belt strap and it's Wicked and Craig bridle and the whole backside is loose on one strap.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So let me here. I just got something else to show you to that point. So, because that is a big deal of mine. It really is. And it's something I'm obsessive over, and I'm a little too obsessive, I think.
I don't know. I mean, I think your customers probably appreciate it.
Yeah, they do. But what I get at the end is like the scratch and dent bucket,
Yeah.
where it's these are the ones that maybe they had too many scratches, or like you kind of dropping stuff.
Tyler's twisting his mustache saying, tell me more about this scratch and dent bucket.
Big scratch and dent guy.
Yeah. So like,
no, I mean, I again, like, I mean, my takeaway from this, and again, kudos to you, Ryan, is like, I mean, it's just eye-opening, and Chuck, I'm sure you have the same thoughts, but it sounds like you ordered, more of this stuff, and from Ryan himself more than I have, is just like the stuff that you're showing and certain level of like detail with this stuff, like showing that corner or whatever, is like just really want to kick myself about so many dumb purchases that I've made over the past, where it's like your scratch and dent pile is probably miles ahead of what some of these other vendors and supply companies are selling.
Yeah.
But it's all, again, it all goes back to expectations. So while this strap here may have had, I don't know what exactly was wrong with this. Sometimes
Who this is coming.
a little tired, but like I know that I can make a belt out of this, and maybe it's a belt that we sell as a scratch and dent belt for a discount, but it all goes back to like, what is that person going to think when they open this up? With this belt here. So I didn't sell this one because, this is a harness leather that, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just like soft in this area. And it's not soft. Like, I don't like
it's your standards, Ryan. Your standards are so bloody high.
Like, it could be used for a belt. It's just not as firm as the straps at the beginning side of the hide. So it's like, why should you get this one just because you were the 12th person to order a strap?
Right.
Like,
Right. Well, and I think they haven't picked up on it. That's the blue veg tan harness, right?
yeah.
Which is absolutely gorgeous and shines. So that was a square. You sent me a square of that at one point, and that stuff shines deeper than shell does. Like it's just unreal.
Yeah, blue is never a popular color. We have a couple. If you like blue, I've got a couple blue veg tan bridle hides that I would let go at a pretty good discount. Just because blue just is like, for our customers, blue's not the best seller. But like, I've got this thing is 3 layers deep. It's of things that didn't meet my standard for one reason, 4 layers deep. For one reason or another. I'll
You
find
need to give them the dad
a
speech
use
about,
for it.
you need to give them the dad speech about how you're disappointed in them.
It's not that it's, their process is just different than American tanneries. So there's the expectations are going to be different. Like this bridle here it's just a little bit softer than.
And I think it's your concerns are probably not. I mean, that's part of us doing this stuff, right? So we all have our kind of bin of scrap bin or whatever. Like I made a wallet and that stitch is out of place, so that's a scratch and dent second kind of thing. And have had people over and they're looking through it and they're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
is the stuff that you don't think is good enough? And I'm like, yeah, no, I wouldn't charge anybody for that. Like take whatever you want out of that bucket. And they're like, really?
or my thing is like whenever I've done like a live market and I know that there's always like there's that one wallet or that one belt or bag that like you personally had a stitch out of place or whatever, and you're like you just don't want to like I've had it happen, especially like a couple of years ago, where like you'd have it there and like that's the first thing that sells, and you're like, oh, I can't believe like that's the one wallet that I'm hoping no one looks at, and like like a corner. Like an edge wasn't burnished as good as you wanted it, or you had a little bit of like a fold on one of the corners or something like that, and you're like, man, this really just pains me, and that's the first thing that sells, and you're like, what the hell? Like, meanwhile, all the other stuff's like up to your standards and sits there.
Yeah.
But yeah, funny. Well, I'm gonna jump here, guys, but Ryan, this has been awesome. We should probably keep this going. Chuck, we'll definitely keep Thursdays going. But yeah, I mean, happy to definitely going to keep the conversation going with you, Ryan. I got some ideas in mind right now that I will just reach out to you about, get the ball moving on. But yeah, this has been great. And as always, Chuck, good catching up. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate you inviting me and listening to me babble on and on about leather.
Thanks for joining us. It's been great having the chat, and we'll definitely do this again.
For sure. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, man.
All right.
We'll see you.
Bye.